Well, it's a minute early, but it seems like you're all in here. This is good. Peace be with you. Thank you. So, this is a little bit weird for me because I've done a lot of teaching in the past, been a professor, been a trainer, and a lot of different things, and generally, I've been the person in the room who knows the most about what I'm going to talk about. I mean, that makes sense, right? Today, not so much. So we'll see how this goes, because I'm thinking there's a whole lot of people in here who know a whole lot more about what we're talking about here than I do. But somebody picked me, so here we go. I'm finding this study on miracles to be really eye-opening and really interesting. I always knew what a miracle is, or at least thought I did, but I don't know if you would have asked me to articulate, to give you a good definition of what a miracle is. I'm not sure I could have done a very good job, and I'm still not too sure. I looked up the definition of miracle in the dictionary. I want to read it to you. I'm going to say I don't really agree with it, but here's what the dictionary says. A miracle is a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency. That's the first definition, and then the next one in the dictionary was a highly improbable or extraordinary event, development, or accomplishment that brings very welcome consequences. The welcome part is the part I'm having a hard time with. Because, yeah, a lot of miracles are welcome, but we're learning in this study, not all of them. They're not. So I did some more research and found other definitions. One is just that a miracle is to achieve God's purpose, show his power, show that he exists. The author of our study, you probably remember reading in the very first introduction to the study, he had a definition. He said, those moments when normal laws of nature are violated by an unexplained force. So he says nothing about them being welcome. And I would kind of like to go with that one. I did find another definition by a Presbyterian theologian. Says the purpose of a miracle in the Bible is not to prove the existence of God, but to prove the legitimacy and validity of an agent of revelation, of someone whom God has commissioned to speak his word. The purpose of the miracle is to verify the messenger of the word of God. So I think all of these kind of address it, but none of them that great in its entirety. This last definition just makes me think of things like Joshua. Okay, so the miracle was God putting words in Joshua's mouth. Miracle of Pentecost, God put words in Peter's mouth. Peter did not come up with that big speech on his own. So it was a miracle. And I think lots of little miracles like that happen all the time. It'll be a miracle if I don't say something that goes viral because this is going to go on the interweb, which is very scary to me. But now let's get into the scripture of this study. The study indicates that it's about the first half of the 10th chapter of Joshua, but really when you read all the questions, we're starting on chapter 7. 7, 8, 9, and the first half of 10 is what this particular week addresses. So I want to talk about chapter 7 to start with. And not sure I'm going to pronounce all the names right, but it starts out with God being mad at a guy named Achan. I think that's how you'd pronounce it. Achan, something like that. Because he took stuff from Jericho. God's orders were, you're just going to utterly destroy that city and you are to take nothing. It's all leveled. It's like the first fruits to God in this conquest of the land of Canaan. You don't get to keep any of it. But this guy did keep it. And I guess at the beginning of the chapter, that's just what is mentioned. And then the chapter goes into Joshua sending spies into Ai and them coming back and saying, yeah, this shouldn't be a big deal. We just send a few thousand guys and we'll take the city. And that didn't work out so well for them. They lost that battle, lost people. So Joshua figures out that, well, maybe I did something wrong. And God lets him know that this guy Achan took stuff. Actually, he didn't say Achan. He just said somebody took stuff. And then he proceeded to help Joshua narrow down who it was that took the stuff. And once they did that, then they ended up stoning Achan, and I think they burned him. So I'm thinking, okay, where's the miracle here? I guess I'd like it if you told me where's the miracle here. Anybody have an idea? Where's the what miracle happened here? Nobody knows. You all know. Carl.
I think it was a timely intervention by God himself is the miracle. Not the event, but the timeliness of it.
Okay. And I'm thinking that God guided Joshua and the Israelites to discover who it was that took the stuff. And when I think about this, okay, so what was it that really, really made God angry in this situation? In this whole chapter, what really made him angry? And what I'm getting out of this is that nobody consulted him. They didn't listen to him. They didn't consult him. They just went ahead and did what they thought they should do. And it didn't work out. So then we move on to chapter 8. And it's in this chapter that God tells Joshua and the Israelites that he is going to give Ai into their hand. So they go and they defeat Ai. And why did it work this time? I think it's because They listened to God. God said, go do it, and they did it. They didn't do it on their own initiative. They just did it. And then, well, basically, I'm just thinking that the miracle there is that God gave Ai into the hands of the Israelites. Then we move into chapter 9, and we got the Gibeonites. And the heading for chapter 9 in my Bible is the guile of the Gibeonites. And they were clever, you know, they didn't live too far away, but they came and acted like they'd been away they'd come from a far land. They had their moldy bread and their cracked wineskins and worn out clothes and looked like they'd been traveling for a long time. And they made a treaty with the Israelites. Was God consulted in this? No. So what was the miracle here? I'm thinking there wasn't one. God had nothing to do with this treaty. I don't think. At least that's not what it looks like to me. But the Gibeonites saved their own skin. They ended up being slaves, but they saved their own skin. So then we get into chapter 10, and the Amorite kings, that we're hearing about the Amorite kings, and they are understandably quite frightened. I mean, they're hearing about these Israelites who are going and beating up on everybody and figuring they're next. So, and they hear about the treaty with the Gibeonites as well. And so they decide that they're going to join forces. There's 5 of them. They join forces to try and stand against Israel. And God says to Joshua, don't worry about it. I've given them into your hands. And then what I thought was kind of interesting is that it said God confounded the Amorites. So he confused the Amorites. I'm not sure what that looked like. But obviously it was divine intervention, yet another miracle. And after the Israelites fought with the Amorites and did do pretty well with them, then God, to finish them off, threw hailstones from the sky. Yet another miracle. So why were there miracles this time? I'm thinking it's because they were listening to God and they attacked when they were told to attack. And they chased when they were told to chase. So we've got a whole bunch of miracles, and we've got instances where there weren't miracles, and there was consequences in both cases. And it got me thinking about, okay, so why do we have all of these miracles? Why do we care? Why do we pay attention to this stuff? And how do we address this? How do we deal with it? And as I'm looking at information and reading and thinking about things that I have looked at in the past, rabbit holes that I've gone down myself, looking at like the scientific explanations for miracles, and you can find all kinds of them out there. There are explanations for why the Red Sea dried up. Different explanations for lots of different things. Why it was dark when Jesus died in the middle of the day in Jerusalem. Why did the sun stop when Joshua asked for the sun to stop? And lots of scientific explanations, like there are eclipses that occurred at times that made these things occur. When it gets down to it, so do the scientific explanations really matter? Or are they just rabbit holes that we go down that really distract us from what the point is of all of these miracles? After all, does it really, really matter if we can explain all of this stuff through science? I am not against science at all. But I feel like, God invented time, God invented this world, God invented science, God invented everything. God is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. He can do whatever he wants. So he can stop, you talk about, he could stop the sun, or he can stop the earth from rotating if he wants. And we think about all the catastrophic events that could occur if the earth stopped rotating. But God could choose to do that and not let all the other stuff, bad stuff, happen. He can just do whatever he wants. So, if he can do whatever he wants, and miracles seem to happen when it works for him, when we take things into our own hands, it doesn't always work out well. We do get lucky sometimes. But when the Israelites took things into their own hands, things didn't work out too well. When God said, go do this, and they did it, things worked out well. So what's this mean for us? Maybe we ought to do the same thing. Maybe I don't know I don't want to tell you what to do. I have no right to tell you what to do, but I think I should do the same thing. Before I make decisions about things that I do, I should be consulting God more than I do now. Don't always remember to do that. And I think, and what's amazing about our God is he is omnipresent. He's here with us now. He's in everything here. He's in us. He's in all the objects in this room. He is everywhere, omnipresent. And so we have the ability to be in his presence. And if we're in his presence and we're thinking about him and consulting him, while we're doing that, can we be sinful? If you're asking God, if you're praying, in the act of praying, if you're asking God what to do, and you're listening, will you do anything wrong? Probably not. So why do we keep doing stuff that's wrong? Well, God gave us a will. And his will and our will are not the same thing. He gave us the opportunity or the ability to make choices for ourselves. He does not want doesn't want to lose any of us. It is his will that we all be saved. But our will gets in the way. And I was reading an article in the newspaper, I think it was a couple weeks ago, about artificial intelligence and all of the ethical stuff that goes with that. And we're talking about, the example in the article was there's a self-driving taxi. And the self-driving taxi is parked in a parking lot waiting for a call, waiting for its next set of orders to go pick somebody up. And that call comes in, and it goes to leave the parking lot, if I'm remembering this right, and there happens to be a pedestrian like walking down the sidewalk across in front of the parking lot. And the taxi runs that pedestrian over. So whose fault is it? Is it this is AI, this is artificial intelligence. So this machine supposedly is, at least in a way, thinking for itself. So is it the machine's fault, the taxi's fault, that it ran the person over? Or is it the fault of the programmer that created the artificial intelligence program that runs the taxi? So these authors of this article it's like, okay, so how do we figure this out? And they ended up finding information or some writings about a couple of theologians from, I think they said like the 14th century, something like that, when the question of the day was, so if we sin, is it our fault or is it God's? Because God made us. He made us to be the way we are, right? So isn't it his fault if we sin? Because he designed us. Well, the conclusion that the theologians came to was he designed us with a will. And that darn will gets in the way. And we end up sinning, even though God, a perfect being, designed us. We've fallen, and we sin. So then back to the taxi real quick, which doesn't really matter that much at this point. We just don't know. Okay, so then do we blame I guess we blame the taxi, because the taxi has its own intelligence. And I am absolutely positive that we cannot blame God for the sins that we make. It's not his fault. It's our fault. And back to the miracles, I believe the miracle is that we get to be in God's presence whenever we want to be in God's presence. And we get to choose whether our will, or sometimes I like to think about it as intellect. I think I'm smart enough to figure out what to do in this situation. Yeah, maybe I am, but I'm not smarter than God. So if I ask God what I should be doing, just like Joshua asked God what he should be doing, when we bother to do that and we listen, we get it right. And I have a whole bunch of other things that I thought about to talk about just all the individual soldiers and how did they know what to do in these wars. But you know what? I think I want to leave it there. Just that we need to work. I believe the miracles are telling us that we need to work on being in God's presence and do what he wants us to do all day long. And that's all I got for this week. You can go home.